Who is Sebastián Morra? Today, we will get to know him and find out about the Sebastián Morra conspiracy theory. Welcome back, art lovers. And today, let us travel to Spain and meet an artist who would paint one of the most famous pictures in history. As you already know, we are talking about Diego here. He was one of the best artists of the Spanish Golden Age. And if you haven't guessed it yet, we will also talk about the world-famous dwarf from his painting. Let's start our story. Identity and role. When researching the life of this man, we must go deep into the 17th century. And, believe me, we will not come up with anything good. Back then, dwarfs were considered court entertainment. That means they were shown in taverns, streets, and even in the courts of kings. They were performing tricks and other activities just to make people laugh. To put it mildly, they were nothing more than slaves for the royal court. It was normal for them to live segregated from society. De Morra was a dwarf who lived in the court of King Philip IV of Spain. According to historical records, he was born in Spain in 1610 and died in 1664. However, there are many stories and questions about his identity, such as the so-called Sebastián Morra conspiracy. We will talk about it later. Famous portrait. Sebastiano da Morra was the subject of one of the most famous oil portraits ever made. The artwork is called Portrait of Sebastiano da Morra, and it was painted by Diego around 1644 to 1645. Now you understand why we started the video with his name. But anyway, today we can admire the masterpiece in the Museo del Prado in Madrid, Spain. Artistic style. This artwork is considered one of the most outstanding examples of work. The great thing about the painting is that it shows how well the artist could capture the psychology of his subjects. No matter if they were a king or a jester, all people were equal to him. With his brush, Velázquez showed that even the most ordinary man had dignity. Here we see how he gave the dwarf a very serious look, which shows he's not just a laughingstock. On the contrary, he makes us think about the position and role of dwarfs in society at that time. Unusual pose. There is something else that makes the portrait stand out. At that time, portraits usually showed a person either standing or seated in a chair. However, here we can see Sebastián de Morra seated on the floor. Of course, it looks very strange to us today, but it was a bold move for that time. Direct gaze. Another interesting fact is the look of the dwarf. He is looking straight at the viewer, and that is very rare in portraiture. It gives the artwork a sense of seriousness and gravity. For sure, Velázquez wanted to show how he felt and how he wanted to be seen, not just as a jester, but as a human being. Contrast in detail. If we pay attention to the details, we will notice another amazing thing. The red and gold cape around his figure and the collar look like the military coat worn by Philip IV. But the jester's hands don't have the same level of detail in the fingers. Maybe the painter wanted to emphasize the face. But that also shows how society viewed the court dwarfs. After all, they were not seen as real people, but only as objects for amusement. Court context. In courtly culture, dwarves like Morra were seen as slaves to the court, destined to amuse and entertain the monarch and the nobility. They were expected to perform tricks and engage in amusing antics to evoke laughter and delight. These jesters were often mocked and ridiculed, and it wasn't uncommon for them to be treated as second-class citizens without rights or through his portraits. Velázquez tried to show how these jesters felt and how others saw them. Identity, conspiracy. But here comes the question, who is Sebastián Morra really? Some sources claim that he was the son of Philip IV and a woman named Maria Bar. However, there is no solid evidence to support this theory. Other sources claim that he was an ordinary court jester. The contradictory documents make it difficult to solve this mystery once and for all. there is another dwarf, whose name appears in connection with the investigation of the personality of Morra. His name was El Primo. Therefore, there is another theory that the famous painting is actually a portrait of him. Who knows? Perhaps we will never learn the whole truth. The artist's study, what is known is that painted at least 10 portraits of dwarfs, and today we can admire them at the Museo del Prado. By the way, was not the only artist who painted dwarfs. During the Spanish Golden Age, it was very fashionable to paint dwarfs and other little people. I wonder if you have heard of the series of paintings by Francisco Goya called Los Capricos. One of the scenes shows a dwarf dancing. Interesting, isn't it? There are about 80 prints in the series, and each of them shows vices, follies, and delusions of the Spanish aristocracy. So what do you think about the dwarf? Do you think it's just a random scene or maybe a hidden protest against the Spanish royalty? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I think it's time to sum up. What do you think about the work of Diego Velázquez? What other artworks of this master do you know? I would love to hear about it. So please share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell for more mind-bending explorations every day.